Perspectives, Finding Common Ground, a podcast series that brings together a panel of thought leader perspectives as a forum to socialize and problem solve education technology issues with the goal to ultimately find common ground.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Perspectives. We'll be exploring teacher readiness in the digital world. I think this is a particularly timely topic given the time of year that we're in, ending one school year and getting ready for the next, and also given the challenges that we have faced here with the pandemic and the impact it's had on teaching styles and learning styles for all those involved. Joining us today, we have three wonderful guests. To start with, we have Barbara Nesbitt, who is the Assistant Superintendent of Technology at Pickens County School District in South Carolina. Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you.
We also have Carmelita Seitz, who is the Director for ISTE certification, joining us from ISTE. Welcome, Carmelita. And finally, Mike Evans, who is the Chief Revenue Officer from Harcourt Houghton Mifflin, or HMH as we all know it as. Welcome, Mike.
Great to be here, Bunch.
Very good, very good. I'd like to start by giving each of you a couple of minutes to just describe your perspective as it pertains to teacher readiness and helping our teachers be ready to teach in the digital world. And I think I'll start with you, Barbara, if that's okay. Just a couple minutes and a little bit about your perspective on this.
All right. Well, first, Pat, thanks so much for having me here today. Always a pleasure to do something in support of ClassLink and all the great work that you do for us out here in the schools. We're a kind of a suburban school district located smack between Atlanta and Charlotte in the upstate of South Carolina with about 16,000 students spread over 500 square miles, 24 schools. So for us, a big challenge when it comes to the issue of teacher training and staff preparedness has to do with a little bit with teacher turnover. We've been pretty fortunate here in our county not to be terribly impacted by the teacher shortage, although we see that is coming. But certainly the need for continuous training of teachers because of retirements and people move when the spouse gets a job and they go to another place. And then just, adding new programs. We've had money with ESSER where we've had to add on teachers. And so we've created some new roles. And so we've had to add on positions. And all of these create challenges when it comes to making sure everybody's embedded in the same culture of how to use technology and the best practices for the best pedagogy in the classroom. And I would say that time is our biggest challenge, is having time to train teachers, access to them when we're also finding because it's kind of a mixed blessing with all of the money we've had with ESSER, with COVID, with the CARES Act. We've also been able to buy extra curriculum, but that requires training, pulling teachers for training. So then we don't have as much time to train them in technology. So time is probably our biggest challenge. We have some others, but I'll let my other colleagues give some of their challenges and we can keep addressing as we move on.
Thank you so much, Barbara. Carmelita, you want to have a couple of initial thoughts you'd like to share?
I would love to, and thank you so much, Patrick, for your support with ISTE and your partnership. We love ClassLink. I would agree with Barbara. Time is definitely a huge underlying piece, and not only time to participate in professional learning, but even time in our personal lives. So I will underscore that because I think that's important. But in regards to readiness in the digital world, my focus is really on honing your skills. And so I feel it's extremely important for educators to remember that after college and getting into this practice, it's something that we want to continue to hone and sharpen our skills. And specifically around what I do at ISTE and in my 23 plus years in education, it's really kind of challenging and growing educators and looking at the intentionality behind using technology, which is very important, not just for tool's sake, not just to use a tool because it's there and available, but really what are the objectives they want to get out of that. And so the intentionality, honing your skills, continuing to grow in your practice and trying new things, I think are important, but also a challenge. It goes back to kind of what Barbara was saying with challenges. It's definitely a challenge to find that time to do it within the school day, as well as the time to do it in your personal lives.
Great. Thank you so much. And certainly not least, Mike, a couple of opening thoughts.
Yeah, Patrick, great to be here. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Houghton Mifflin Harcourt. Apologize for my voice. I'm struggling a little bit with the cold. When we think about our responsibilities in my part of the organization, we're focused on really everything about the customer: sales, marketing, customer success, and then all the technical support that goes with our technologies that we make available to school districts. And for us, when we think about the challenge around teacher readiness, one of the things that goes through our mind, Barbara and Carmelita were talking about time. For us, I think the word that comes to mind is transformation. We have a certain way that we've helped teachers over time, and that way has evolved a lot, and it's accelerated quite a bit as we think about what's happened with the pandemic. Lots and lots of teachers that were, dipping their toes into digital learning have really jumped in all the way. They were forced to during the pandemic. And for a lot of people, it was very new territory, and they encountered solutions that in all cases didn't work together in the most seamless fashion. So when we think about our responsibility and our role in helping teachers from a professional development standpoint, one of the things that's top of mind for us is how do we help them make that transformation into a digital world as we adjust and transform into that digital world with them.
And Mike and Carmelita, I want to add to something when you're just addressing challenges in an introduction. Talked about time, but something Carmelita said and then Mike echoed it, made me think of energy. And I feel that for those of us sitting here in the school district, I swear to you, it feels like we've been in this pandemic for 5 years, and we thought it was a sprint that turned into a marathon. And like we were talking today, that it feels like, Delta was 2 years ago and Omicron was a year ago, and all of that happened in the last 8 months. And our teachers, quite honestly, are tired. And they have dealt with so many mental health issues, so many physical challenges of kids being out on quarantine or out on sick, or dealing with all of the things that happened to kids while they were home on remote learning, either at the beginning of the pandemic or during quarantines. These have exhausted our teachers. And I don't know what Carmelita and Mike are seeing as they deal with other districts, but just as an example, we always run summer camps, and we can't find teachers to run summer camps this summer because they're exhausted and they just need a break. And so taking time to train teachers and staff and best practices around technology, that in some ways that training was interrupted by the pandemic, because what we needed to do with technology during the pandemic was a bit different. I think that both time and energy are huge factors to getting at the type of training that Carmelita was referencing, which is really effective. Technology training, what Mike was talking about being transformative. And so I think that we can't really overstate that teachers are pretty wore out. And I think that, time to get with them and all the weight that they've been carrying has been pretty substantial.
I fully agree. And, hitting on the school closures is, I think we have to. That is part of our world. That's what we've been through. And, a lot of times when I speak to teachers, that's what I hear. I hear this across the board. I hear this globally when we're even talking with international school teachers, that it's just we're exhausted. And I think at this point, usually my recommendation is continue with what you're doing and try not to add more on. Just keep that skill going, continuing with what's comfortable. Don't lose it. Don't go back to what we might have been before. And just be patient with yourself. Be patient with the fact that it may work, it may not work, because of the social emotional from not only students, but teachers, but to not just give up either, right? And I think that's important. And patience, I guess. I'll add that to our time piece. I would say patience from leadership, and then patience.
Absolutely. You are so right. And I think for those of us sitting in leadership positions, we sometimes feel this weight to make sure that we're moving, we're moving the bus, and we're keeping things going, and we're meeting these skill gaps that have always existed, that have just been compounded by what we've been through in this pandemic. And the weight of that is so heavy, but sometimes we forget that the people who are actually doing the work are the ones that are locked behind closed doors with other people's children. And it's hard stuff.
I was going to say, Barbara, the last point that you make is one that really kind of resonates with me. And I think it's likely that people don't actually consider it to the degree they might need to. The level of transformation, has been extreme for everyone, not just within school districts, within companies, et cetera. I think about people at HMH and how they're focused on all kinds of, the rules are one thing one day, the expectations are one thing one day, the sense of what I should be doing, to respond to whether it's the pandemic or, all the other things that I need to be thinking about in my life. Those are changing very rapidly on a personal level. They're changing very rapidly on a business level. And I think that's difficult for people across the country. But then when you think about teachers and the unique situation that they're in, they're not responsible only for that transformation as it affects their family or, quote, their workplace, but all those other families that are represented by the children that are part of their classroom. And we start thinking about sort of the exponential pressure that brings to somebody. It is a pretty unique situation, and one that I don't know that people step back to consider as much as maybe we could or should.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And I really think that paying attention to the mental health of our teachers is critically important, and our leaders. Like at the district level, what are we doing to support our principals, our assistant principals? And I know we've kind of had some conversations prior to this, Carmelita and I have at least, and we talked about, well, what can we do? Right? Like you can't just say, oh, it's hard and we can't do anything. We still have to help. We have to do something. And so some of the things that we have talked about, and it's a challenge for leaders, but it's the right thing to do, is personalizing training for our teachers and chunking it in ways that they can access the training that is, easily accessible in like no more than 45 minutes. Just give them things in small pieces that they can do where they can still hone their skills and pick up on new training. But we're honoring the fact that their time is limited. And for us, we do a lot of that training online. And I think, Carmelita, you all encourage a lot of that where they can anytime 24/7 access options to be synchronous groups, asynchronous learning. And I think, Mike, you also do some things where you offer training and chunks on your content out to teachers.
We do. It's been a big transition for us, and it's come out of a lot of what we've learned over the last couple of years. But we've moved significantly away from the full day of soup to nuts training in person to how do we tee up flexibility in terms of content that's appropriate for you, a little bit of guidance around that content too, so that you can help decide for yourself what's right. And then to your point, time releasing that to the time when that training will have the most impact on you.
I'd like to tag on and kind of bring those together. So we're talking about personalized and chunking, and Barbara, we had a great conversation around that. I'm also going to include modeling. I think sometimes we overlook that. And I know that we focus on that a lot with ISTE and our professional learning, and especially the certification that I lead. But giving opportunities for chunked, personalized, some time to play is learning, as well as modeling. Let colleagues be together and share out. There was a lot of learning, and Barbara, you had said it, we went full force, full speed ahead. There was a lot of learning that happened in that time, and we didn't take a moment to pause and say, what did we learn from that? How can we show each other what we learned and learn from each other's lessons? And I think that opportunity is super important. I think it's a lost piece because we're so busy to get everything done. Seeing other teachers and how they're implementing, having the coaches come in and model. I know that is an essential piece for learning. So
Absolutely. And Carmelita, we've talked about how important it is to model the use of technology in the tools that you are wanting your teachers to eventually use, but also in the platforms, like in the learning management system. So you don't, if you're asking your teachers, for example, to work in Canvas or to work in Schoology, are you modeling that for your teachers? Are you setting up best practices for foldering, for organization, for naming of files? Are you using the tools like the assessment tools and the things that you can do to engage students? If you're going out to the content, are you showing how that content can be brought into the learning management system from our great vendors like HMH and others? So I think that's so important. And are you modeling the way that they should be used? Are you questioning? Are you, showing how to do wait time when technology? Are you allowing time for student to student engagement and for reflection? And then I think importantly, are you then pausing, like you just said, Carmelita, to reflect on, was that effective? Did you notice that I used these tools and here's why? And how did that impact you as a student? And how could you take that and carry it out into your classroom?
100%. We're a team, leadership, teachers, counselors, all professionals in the school district. And Barbara, when we were talking about that, we were talking about leadership. Join the professional development and then utilize that professional development, those skills and those tools in conversations, in meetings with your teachers, because it not only allows your teachers to see it in another way, but they also understand that you understand what they're doing. And I think that's very important, because then it feels like we're a collaborative team working together for movement forward, right? And then as a leader, you understand the fail forwards and the challenges that come out of that. And it also helps guide and inform new technology you want to bring on, or retiring certain technologies, or moving forward because you're actively using it.
Barbara and Carmelita, actually what you're saying is very inspiring to me, because I think about, I could tell you that demand for coaching professional services from us is probably one of the biggest growth areas that we have, which is great. It's very consistent with what you say. But I think the most interesting thing about what you were just sort of talking about is the way that you've been able to lean into that kind of change management, bringing people along, not only identifying coaching and modeling as an important aspect of bringing teachers to where you would like them to be, but how you're making sure that that actually happens. It's not an academic thing. It's actually a change management exercise that you're leading, and I think is having a profound impact.
And just one more thing, Pat, real quick, to what both of you said is let people know when it's hard. Like our assistant superintendent for instruction, she's amazing with instruction, but she's been a little slow to adopt some of our technology tools. And so during COVID, she's like, I'm committed. I'm going to learn Safari montages galore, and I'm going to use, Schoology. And then we had WebEx. Well, she did a WebEx and used breakout rooms for the first time. And it didn't go great. But then the second time she goes, the last time we did this a month ago, I really struggled, but I figured this out and I'm determined to use it. And I think that gives permission for your principals to also then try things and be gracious with their teachers. And then she did this huge study with we have a, we're real big in our superintendent is really, really determined to get leadership succession planning right. And so we have this aspiring lead cohort of folks who want to be principals. And so there's existing instructional coaches and assistant principals. And she worked with them on this grading for equity book study. And she had them create a Schoology course from it for other people who were going to come behind, so that this group not only was learning, but they were creating a course for other people in the process of this kind of their first course. And I think it's so important that we're modeling our tools and our best practices. And that was like an extra step, but it really was important because she just integrated the technology very seamlessly while creating online PD for the next group. So I thought that was a great example of what Carmelita and Mike were both talking about.
I'm impressed by the passion with all of you and onto this really important topic. And one thing strikes me from a couple of the comments that have been made, and some of that's around the personalization that's required and how important it is, the burden and how heavy it is, and how time and access to these resources is so important. How do you get those lined up? How do you optimize that kind of balance? Because personalizing it one way works great for some people, but it's a different way for others, and they all have to be able to kind of stay on track. So how do you keep people on track and still keep the personalization?
I'll tell you one thing that we do, and I don't know if anyone listening has read Hall and Hord's work on organizational change, and they've got decades of research on really like kind of large scale organizational change, but they look at it like an implementation bridge you walk across, and everyone walks across the bridge at a time and a pace that's based on their particular stage of concern. And I think it's important for organizations to acknowledge that everybody adopts technology, and not just like there's one technology, like there's dozens and dozens and dozens of technology integrations and adoptions that we have teachers go through. And they're not all going to do this at the same pace and at the same time. And we have to say that's okay. And so we create opportunities for learning. For us, we use like leads. And so we get kind of our teachers, our few that have the highest tolerance for ambiguity. And I know who they are. And there are about 20 of them. And we've got 1,200 teachers. And they're kind of our go-tos when we want to test stuff, and they love doing it. And then behind them, we have like a group of kind of early adopters. And we learn from that first group, and then we train the second. And then we develop our training material after they have been using something for about a year. And then they help us develop the training material that really goes out to about 70% of the staff. But once that training material is developed online and those courses are created, people can enter them at any time that they want to. And so you're building up your repertoire of online professional development and the people who can lead that professional development for people who retire, for people who transfer in, for new teachers. And for the folks who maybe they should have been learning about the LMS, maybe they should have picked up more on the math textbook the year that it was adopted. But you know what? They had a baby, or they had an elderly person living with them, and they were providing elder care, or their spouse was going through cancer, or whatever. And so acknowledging that we understand that everybody's not adopting this, and okay, you missed it the first go round, but we're still going to offer the 101, the 102, the 103, the 201 course, the 202 course. And it's for us, that's how we personalize. It's not that you've got 1,200 IEPs for teachers, because that's not doable, but you've created a repertoire of things that people can go into as they need to.
You know, it's interesting about what you say, Barbara. I think about a big part of our world is software development. And one of the software development methodologies is the Agile Development methodology, which is all about, trying things, failing fast, learning from them, moving on. And so when you think about personalization, it's not a one size fits all by the nature of the term. But also it's not something that should be completely free form. So the idea of understanding what's working, what's not working, where I have some challenges that I need to lead into, where I have expertise that I may want to lean into. What it sounds like you're describing is an agile an agile approach to professional development, which makes perfect sense to me.
I agree. And I love that cycle that you talked about, the first coming in, the first adopters, and then they kind of come back and support those that are coming in next. And I have seen that, especially in our certification with our cohorts. One group, the high adopters, will come in, they'll become certified. And then when they bring the classroom teachers in, then they're able to support them. I would say in addition to that, I have seen partnering up, which I think is also an important piece. So partnering an educator that maybe is new to the specific technology with either a coach or a peer who has been using that digital tool, and let them grow together. And so the educator that is new to the technology, they're seeing how the person who's had experience is growing, but then the support comes in. So even kind of that pairing up really helps. And I've seen that in a lot of the certification cohorts we had, so that they can kind of troubleshoot and go back and forth, and they feel safe. Almost, I would say, accountability partners, for lack of a better, really just meet during the training, and then they meet afterwards for growth. And what's nice about that is those who are a little bit forward with the technology and have been using that, they can kind of see where they were before, and they can give that guidance and that support as that teacher goes on. But then also the teacher who is new to it can kind of see that transformation. Really, what can it do after I've learned it? How can it change the instructional practices I have?
And I love what you just said, because we've had another conversation in the past where we talked about the focus on ISTE standards is authentic tech integration, and we have to explain why. And I think when you are using your teachers as the trainers, or people are coming in to observe in your classroom, or you bring people in from another school district to observe, or you send your teachers out as trainers to other school districts, which we've partnered with in our state to do. When teachers have to explain why they're doing something with technology, it makes them really think, why am I doing this? And it is. And I think that it's really important. Like we talked about modeling, that you are stopping and saying, okay, here's why I did this. Here's why I used this tool. But getting your teachers to reflect on, why did I do this? Did it work? Can I change it? But the why, I think, is important. And that, does it connect to anything beyond just because it's a cool tool? Like, are we doing it because we know that student to student interaction is important? So we're going to use Flipgrid, or we're going to do a shared Google Drive, because student to student engagement is often more impactful than adult to student engagement, because they learn from each other. So if you can connect the tool to the why, and I don't know if you can share more about some of ISTE's passion behind that.
So I was just going to start throwing out criteria and indicators, and I'm like, no, not going to do that. Nobody wants to hear that but me. But we had talked about this before, Barbara, and I say it jokingly with a little truth behind it. If you're working with your colleagues, or you're a coach or a leader, and you're showing a digital tool that they could learn how to use that on YouTube, then you need to think deeper than that. It really should be that instructional purpose. And I'm going to say this, even though I hope no one at ISTE is watching. I will say this, and sometimes it means not using technology, because your end objective, it doesn't have a tool, or the tool is going to be such a higher lift that it's going to diminish the learning. But it's really thinking backwards. It's backwards design. What do I want to get out of this? What are the skills that we need our learners, our students, to achieve from this? And what technology do we have? And if you notice, that should be the last piece. Though it's important, it should be the last piece.
Right, exactly. So even if you're thinking of just that student to student engagement, or giving students giving feedback to each other, if you're in class, you're probably going to turn and talk. You don't need technology. Or they can create shared, they can, display work and walk around the room and place stickers as they're reading. But then if you think, well, if it's something that's a homework, then they can get feedback on that. Then that's when you use the technology, because they're away from each other. So I do think it's important, the why. And I think that resonates with teachers, because they didn't come into the classroom for the tool. They came in for the why.
They came in for the why, and reminding them the why is what's important. Even though the past couple of years, we've thrown so much technology, and I think a lot of educators feel I have to use it all. My school has purchased it. We have all of this in the classroom. I'm going to be observed. All of those layers. Really, again, that pausing, that giving time, but remembering what it is that you want to do, and what's the outcome, and is the technology going to enhance it to be effective, or is it going to overshadow it to where it's trying to troubleshoot?
Let's take that thought and go dig a little bit deeper in it. We talked about the last couple of years during the pandemic. People have just been thrown in, and they've had to adapt, and they've had to do things. How do we, has this caused gaps in their true efficiency or proficiency in the use of technology? And if so, how do we right size it a little bit? Because everybody's jumped in. Have we built bad habits, or are we just missing some things? Or how do we get on course for kind of what the new reality is going to look like?
Well, I'll tell you, Patrick, on that front, and this may be as much a question for Barbara and Carmelita as it is a comment. The focus of this conversation is on professional development, but part of what goes through my mind when you think about all the technology that teachers have been inundated with, and it's how it's ramped over the last couple of years, is how well does it all actually work together? How easy is it to work with that puzzle? How difficult is it? And how alone or supported are teachers as they kind of work to figure that out? And I don't know, Barbara, from your school district, or Carmelita, from your experience, if you have a point of view on how's that going for teachers? How is the technology holding up in terms of being able to work across it in the way that I know they want to? It's certainly a focus for us, trying to make things as seamless as possible. Just very curious as to what the experience is like for the folks who are working with it day to day.
Well, we were pretty fortunate in Pickens that we started paying attention to our digital ecosystem like years ago. And we've been involved with IMS Global for a long time, in large part because George Perot, who now is Chief Academic Officer for ClassLink, and I became dear friends through our work with IMS. And, he's a big reason why our district had ClassLink. And then we also have Schoology, we have Safari Montages, Allure, and we had Video WebEx right before the pandemic hit. And so all of these tools work together already. And for our teachers, they just call it magic, like the ClassLink magic, the rostering magic. They don't understand any of the technical. I can't say that's all true, because sometimes our teachers will talk about LTI and keys and secrets, and it blows me away. But I do think that it falls as the responsibility of the district to make sure your digital ecosystem is magic for your students and your teachers, with the rostering, with the links. Our philosophy is we don't tell teachers how to use their web applications. We just make it easy for them too. So if they want to go right out to the vendor website and use the textbook, they have great LMSs. And so if you're an AP science teacher, AP chemistry, and they have this great platform, you don't need to build in Schoology. You can go right to that platform, and ClassLink makes it easy to bounce over. But if you are someone and you've got lots of different tools that you want to use, we want the cartridges to be in Safari Montage, and we want them to be able to come into Schoology along with the Google Drive. And, that may be kind of where they start from. Even though it's rostered in ClassLink, they may not spend a lot of time there. They may spend it in Schoology. So we want that to be easy for teachers. I do think teachers are more likely to adopt technology that doesn't require a big technical lift. And then you can focus on the pedagogy of why you're using it. And I do think, Mike, you are so right that the importance of that cannot be minimized, because we can't make things harder for teachers. And if teachers are rostering all of their kids in a textbook platform, some teachers are going to do it and some teachers aren't. And it's not fair that based on who your teacher is whether you have access to high quality material.
Yeah, that really speaks to me. Thank you, Barbara.
Mm-hmm.
That's Barbara, underscore that very important. I'm gonna kind of look at it at a different angle, Michael, and it was something both I believe Barbara and I said, but I definitely heard Barbara say it, is reflection, time to reflect. And I was speaking with another colleague and I threw out a crazy idea. I know this cannot happen, but wouldn't it be great if not over the summer, but we could take the first month of true school, have the students stay home. I know nobody wants to hear that, stay home, but really give teachers a moment to reflect on what was good, reflect on what was challenging, and give that feedback back to the district. What do they need? And Barbara, kind of what you were talking about, if there's a district that doesn't have it easily all linked together, it would be nice if we have that. And that's where district leadership can then assess that. Where should we move forward? Is it more digital tools and hardware, or is it really focusing on that ease of use? So I have access at my fingertip. Do we have access at our fingertip? However, the tools that we have are not as easy to use. And so kind of readjusting that. And maybe that's, I shouldn't even say maybe, it's not just solely on the teacher's shoulders to reflect, but as a school system, reflecting on what we have, where we're moving, and where do we want to go, really thinking forward. Now, where do we want to go after this?
Yeah, Carmelia, that's interesting too, because instead of time for reflection, I imagine for a lot of teachers and school systems, it's a little bit of the exact opposite. You're trying to run 5 simultaneous races at once. I have a new class. I, have a new program I just implemented. I got to get my kids rostered. I've got all these things to do, and I don't have any real time to sort of put those in series. I'm doing them all in parallel at a very big crunch time at the beginning of the year.
But Pat, back to one of your original questions, has the pandemic helped or hindered the integration of technology? And probably it's a little bit of both. And I think it's on us to help teachers reflect on, like, how do you teach in an online environment? And is it an inclement weather day and this is like once or twice a year? Well, that's a little different than for the next 2 weeks, we're in online learning. And so therefore we've got to have, synchronous classes where kids log in and they're, we're asking them to show their video if they can, if they have enough internet bandwidth for that. And we're actually doing some instruction and putting them in breakout rooms and groups. Or is this just, it's snowing twice a year and we just want the kids to, not have to make up the days. And so we're going to do some fun stuff on these days at review. Well, that's different. And it's also different from, I'm in a classroom and I have a lecture to deliver. I'm in a classroom and we're doing a constructivist lesson, or we're doing the 5 E's. How you use technology depends in large part on how you've designed your lesson. And that should depend, like Carmelita said, on backwards design and what the outcome for learning is and what kind of thinking you're trying to get your kids to do.
I would even say, let's not forget the teachers who used a lot more technology in their career in the past 2 years than they ever did. And we've all moved forward. I was reading a blog and they was talking about a survey that went out. And it was saying that 40% of teachers enhanced their uses of digital tools. And then 40% of teachers began using digital tools. And which is great if you think 80% of educators across the world, were using technology. But those that had already been using it, they might be in that realm of understanding their balance. Those that were brand new or newer to it, let's not forget them. And because we are still moving forward, remember there were a lot of teachers that didn't have those pre-skills before they were just shoved in the pool. And we need to go back a little bit and support them.
Well, let me try to take on a big challenge because you guys talked about an awful lot here, and it's wonderful to have the mindset here. I'm going to try to summarize some things that I think are common for all of these perspectives. And when I'm done, then you guys can shoot holes at me and tell me what I got wrong. But I think I've got a pretty good idea here. I want to start with a statement that we started with right off the bat, and that is that people are key to this, particularly the teachers, and we have to respect and support them. And I think the respect and support for those individuals is blatantly obvious among this group and is very well appreciated. I think we also have to have kind of an end in mind or a why we're doing this. Technology is there. Technology brings in a different set of challenges though. So we really have to make sure we're using it for the right reasons. And when we use ed tech, we're not just doing it for the sake of tech. I also heard a couple of sidebars to that. And one is that the support structure for teachers, those outside the classroom, really need to take on this challenge of making the technology easier to use, making it more seamless, making it more on target and appropriate. We need to find ways to take the tech challenge out of tech, if at all possible. And very, very important is that we have time to kind of reflect on how it's going, both from an instructional and from a technology perspective. And it has to be both by the teachers themselves, the instructors themselves, but also those that are providing the tools for them. And probably some dialogue around that is very important. Personalizing the learning into chunks so that staffs can consume them at their pace and in ways that are aligned to why are they doing it. If they can't say why they're using the technology, they probably need to reconsider it. And then modeling is incredibly important, not just modeling and showing them, but doing it in their environment. And there are some techniques, including pairing up with a peer to help kind of advance that support. And then finally, training needs to be perceived much like the changes that have been made to software development. It's agile. It is short cycles, constant improvement, share out what works and doesn't work so you can immediately abandon the things that aren't and you can focus in on those that are. And a continuous improvement program is really kind of key to making this successful and long lasting. Did I capture the common ground there?
Did a pretty good job.
Yeah, well done.
Okay. Well, I certainly opened the door. You guys have a chance here to add any closing thoughts before we conclude today. I think you guys have all been wonderful, and I want to thank you all for contributing so generously to this conversation. But if anybody has any additional thoughts they'd like to share.
I would just say, Patrick, it's been my pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Barbara, Carmelita, it's great to meet both of you. I really enjoyed the conversation. Look forward to talking to you again soon.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Always is. It's a great group to be with. Thank you for the opportunity.
I agree. You can see the passion, you can hear the passion, and this is what's going to help continue us moving forward. So thank you. Thank you for bringing us together.
Wonderful. Well, I think you made my role in this whole thing very easy today. You all have so generous in your contributions. And again, remember, our goal is to continue to socialize education-based interoperability or technology issues. And hopefully we find some common ground that can make even a little bit of difference in how we work well together. So ClassLink is proud to sponsor this meeting and to facilitate these conversations. Thank you so much for joining us. And please turn into our next conversation or follow us on our media hub at classlink.com. You're also welcome to share your thoughts or suggest topics for our conversations to perspectives@classlink.com. Thank you so much. And until next time, take care.
Thank you for listening. ClassLink is proud to be the meeting place to facilitate these conversations. If you have a topic idea, send it to perspectives@classlink.com. To keep hearing our perspectives, be sure to follow us on Apple and Spotify and subscribe to us on YouTube.